Hello, everybody. Hi, thank you for joining us. Good morning, or good night, or good evening, depending on what time zone you're in. But thank you for joining us for the Talk to Your Data, Build a Voice-Powered AI App with AWS. So, like I mentioned in the Discord, if y'all are coming from there, we are going to be powering this stream by Vincent Irolo, who I will be introducing in just a short minute. But in the meantime, make sure you check into your stream. This check-in link is super important to make sure that we can get y'all the credit that you deserve for attending this stream. So here, I will put that check-in link in the chat one time just in case y'all need to copy it from somewhere and you can't just like see it on the screen. So there it is. And hello, I see so many people. Hi. So many people logging on. Yay. Good morning, good night, good evening, wherever y'all are. So we're going to get started with our stream. Make sure that y'all check in at this link. I'm going to switch it over to Vincent, who'll give you his own intro. But Vincent is an AWS cloud developer and developer advocate. And I'm going to switch it over to Vincent. Vincent, I'm going to add you onto the stage now.
Hello, everyone. So I'm Vincent, and just an AWS community builder. I just love anything about the cloud and, of course, AI as well. So today we'll be doing some fun stuff. We'll be building a very fun application. We're just going to see how AI actually works behind the scene. And basically, what our app will be doing is we talk to it and it analyzes what we have, given it using AWS Comprehend and Transcript. So it will get the data we have given it, by speech, and it will translate it and give us back an output. So while I was trying to come up with an app idea for this stream, I had different ideas in mind, right? One I'll share, and then before I'll go ahead with the one we already have on the screen. I don't know, is my screen on?
Let me add that to the stage really quick.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so firstly, I was thinking about when it comes to building applications, and you have, let's say, you want to build a resume, but you don't want to, do the typing. You want to talk to the AI, more like give it your data, the job you're trying to apply for, the role, your experiences, and then AI will build an application for you, like a resume for you. Sorry. So you give the data to the app, and it does go ahead and build a resume based on the data you have given it. But then I think it will be a little bit complex. So that was the first idea I wanted to come up for the stream. But then I was like, okay, let's actually face a problem that we face on a daily basis. So which actually led me to the voice and space tracker, right? So most of the time we spend so much time, buying this, buying that, and we just can't keep track of things we have bought over the time. So that basically is the idea behind the app we are going to build today, right? Let me scroll down a little bit here. So we're going to see how AWS Transcript and AWS Comprehend actually is going to work hand in hand to, make this happen. I'm just going to show you a demo right now, what we are going to build at the end of the stream. Okay, so this is basically what it looks like. So I because I'm from Nigeria, so I just built in the Nigeria currency as well as USD, of course. So the idea here is every single time you make a purchase, you tell the app you bought something. I'll just give you a quick sample. So let's say I spent $50 on food. Okay, so it captures that amount and the category of the expenses, which is on food, and it captures that. It saves that for you. So for now, this is we're not storing this on any database, or this is just temporary, right? If I refresh the page, the whole data goes off. So I mean, later you can explore that, try to store the data on DB and persist the data. But for now, we're just focusing on the AI behind the scene, right? So it captures. I said, I spent $50 on food, and let's say I bought something else, $30 on transportation. Okay, so it also detects that I spent $30 on transportation. So now let's see what happens when I say something unrelated to expenses at all. Something unrelated. Okay, so could not extract expense details because we specifically build this to track expenses, right? So when it detects, it does not detect a category and it does not detect an amount. It doesn't do anything, you know. So so the goal is to keep track of our expenses. And we just want to see how AI can actually help us do that, right? Just to extract the exact uh, categories or segments you're looking for, which is the amount and the food. Also, if I were basically, maybe let's say I spend the naira and I said, okay, 25,000 naira in domain or for domain. Okay, so it detected the amount I spent, but it didn't actually do well with where I spent it on, right? So we can actually, maybe because of the way I worded it, but I can do better. 5,000 naira on transportation. Okay, so 5,000 on transportation. So for now, it's going to detect, either you mention in dollars or you mention in naira. Basically that's the two currencies that it supports. For now, that's basically what I built it for to do. Yeah, track expenses in USD and track expenses in naira. Okay, so the other tools we had here. So basically, if I go to naira, I will see the expenses in naira, and if I go to USD, I will see the expenses in USD, right? And I can export any of these to a CSV file. So I've also included that. So it's like I can actually easily export that. So I can easily export that for my own reference. So if you click on export, that will download the file, and you should be able to see, those expenses as well. Let me see if that really works. Yeah, it does. So it will export those specific category. If it's in dollar, it does that. If you switch to the other currency, naira, it will also export based on the currencies you switched. So that is the whole goal of today's stream. Just want to see how AWS helps us to build something like this. So just a quick one. Let's actually see AWS comprehend what it is and what it does. Then we also see the AWS transcript, what it does, and basically how it works. So I'm just going to do a little bit of Google search here. And I'll go to comprehend documentation. So it's just an NLP, a natural language processing. Basically, what it does, in summary of the whole stuff you have in the page is it's analyzing the text and extract entities that you are specified, right? So that's basically what it does. Trying to look for the pricing. So if you go to the comprehend slash pricing, you will see uh, how the pricing works. I think it's basically categorized by regions. Yeah, basically. But then, so for each endpoint, like for each request, that's amount of money that costs. So you can check out the documentation for the full pricing, up to 10 mini units, and just understand how it works. You can also use the AWS pricing calculator to understand how it works. But for now, you can actually start for free. I think if you start for free, AWS basically give you free trial for most of its resources. Though I think they are stopping that for now. I think they are going on with a new model where they give you, when you sign up for an account for the first time, they give you access to either $30 or so that you can actually use for to play along with the services, right? So for this stream, you need an AWS account. Though we'll be interacting with AWS Comprehend programmatically. So we'll be using the SDK from the JavaScript SDK to communicate with it. So we are not going to be doing any of that in the console. So we programmatically access comprehend and use it in our code. So you need an AWS account to follow along with the demo. And also I just put in the GitHub repository for this in the comment section. Okay. So you can also follow along with the code base and see what I have here. So once you have AWS account, the next thing you need to do is to configure that CLI. So you need to configure AWS CLI in your machine because you want to communicate with. So probably there's two ways we can do that. So we can actually always, plug in our access keys. But if you work with a specific platform for on a daily basis, I think the best thing you should do is to configure it in the CLI. So I don't need to always plug in the environment variables. You can just communicate with it, anytime you want. So if we go to your browser and type AWS CLI, you should be able to download the CLI for whichever OS you are using, Linux, Windows, or Mac. So you should be able to download any of that. So just click on Get Started. That should take you to the download option. Second. Okay, a bit slow. Yeah, so just search for AWS CLI and download that, follow along for Linux, Windows, or any of that. So once you have that downloaded, the next thing you need to do is to configure it, right? And we can actually do that using AWS configure. Let me show you. So if you just after downloading, you can verify that you have it already installed. Sorry, that should be CLI.
Vincent, by the way, if you're trying to share your screen or your code, we can't see that. We can just see the AWS CLI if you're trying to share that.
Give me 1 second.
Yeah, for sure. If you want to share different screens, you have to click like cancel screen share and then start a new one. So you were screen sharing your web browser.
Oh,
Yeah, and now since you want to share your code editor, you've got to cancel it and then start a new one.
I see.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I'm just gonna share the entire screen.
Yeah, go for that. Yeah, no worries. While we're waiting, I think you actually got some questions if you're interested in answering those right now.
Okay.
So let me wait for you to. Yeah, so somebody asked this question right here. Pizza for
Meanwhile, okay, so if you mention other types of numbers, example data, number of days, number of participants, or math stuff, how will it be handled? Okay, I'm trying to understand the question actually.
So I think
Okay,
this was
so
your web app.
mm, yeah, so I think I got the question. So probably he's asking if you mention like other stuff that does not relate to expenses or how will it handle that. So basically, uh, I'll show you. Basically, we have actually programmed this, or we have actually set the description to listen to prices, right? So when you mention a price, you are expected to mention like, okay, let's say $50. So it knows this, you're talking about currency at that point. So if you speak something outside the concept of what it has programmed to do, basically to just give you an error message. Let me see. So if I say 1 times 1, okay, so it's not expecting this. So it's not built to handle something outside that scope. So basically it will just give you an error. Could not extract expense details because it's looking specifically for expense details. So you're looking because it's an expense calculator, right? Or expense tracker. It's looking for currency and it's looking for category where this money was spent. So it's looking for something like currency. You have to mention the currency. Let's say $50, $30, #5, and you need to mention what you spend it on. So that's basically what the app is looking for. It's just looking for those two those two inputs, the price and the purchase. So if you mention something outside the scope, then it's not going to understand that because it's not built to understand something outside that specific scope. So I hope that answers the question. Okay, so you can download the CLI, configure. Give me 1 second. Let me find exactly what I'm looking for here. Okay, so AWS CLI. So once you have downloaded it, whichever operating system you are on, you can confirm that you have it installed properly and the version. So you can just type in AWS CLI and then check for the version. Right. I don't know why it's telling me command not fine. This should work. I see. Which AWS? Okay. AWS version. Okay, that should work. Okay, so you can actually confirm that you have it installed and everything was fine. And then the only command you need is AWS configure, right? So before you do that, you need to go to the console and you need to create an IM policy. I'll just show you. So once you sign up for the console, once you sign up for an AWS console, and you created an account and you downloaded the CLI, you can go ahead and configure an IM policy. So IAM policy is access management. Just think about it as the key to access specific doors. So this is where you configure what you need, basically the privileges that you need to access the resources. I'll give you an example of how this works. So when you join a company, you have access to specific resources, right? So let's say you're a junior engineer and you're invited to the GitHub repository. Uh, you are not given access to the main branch. You're not given access to, merge uh, pull request. So you have specific resources that you can actually access. So that's basically how IAM works when it comes to the cloud environment. So you create an IAM policy, an IAM account, and you give it specific access to what it can, uh, to what it can access. So the idea here is when you are building an application, it's always good to give that policy just the necessary resources it needs. So for example, if our goal here is to communicate with AWS comprehend. So if we create an IAM policy, at the end of the day, we just need to give it access to AWS comprehend. If we are going to access, if the AWS comprehend, if we are going to access maybe S3 bucket, and so just focus on the resources you need. So the resources you need, you just give that IAM policy the resources. So from the AWS console, you can just search for IAM. So you should be able to see this here, manage access to AWS resources. So from here, you can create an IAM policy. Just go to users, and you can just create a new user. Right, so give this user a name. Let's say MH user. You see an option if you want to provide user access to the AWS console. So basically, you don't need to provide this because you're building an application that communicates to the AWS resources programmatically. So you don't need to log into the console for this. But if you are creating, let's say, user join your organization and you want to give them access to the console, then you can enable this so that this user could be able to go to console.aws.amazon.com and log in with those credentials, right? But for now, we don't need this, so we skip this. We can just go to next. You can click on attach policies directly, right? But if you have already permission templates, for specific resources, you can just copy that. But if you don't, then you can attach, resources from here. So click on attach policies directly. So once you have that, you can just search for comprehend. Let me give you a second right here. So you can just search for comprehend. This should show you all the whole AWS comprehend resources or policy that you can attach to this IAM user. Our focus would be on using the comprehend full access because we want to access everything that comprehend offers, right? So click this, and then if you have other resources, let's say if we're trying to communicate with S3 buckets, we're trying to communicate with other AWS services, you can always come here and just search for that policy and attach it. So for now, we just stick to just comprehend full access because that's basically the only services or resources that our application is talking to at the moment. So once you have that, you can click on next. Yeah, you can just go ahead and create user. So once you have that user created, you can go back to that user to create a security credentials for that user. So when you go to security credentials, you see an option called create access key. So this basically you can create access key that you can use to communicate with your AWS, from your application, from your CLI to the AWS console. So you need to create an access key for that. So you can just stick to command line as the use case, confirm that you understand the risk, and click on next. You can, put the description tag value, but not necessary. And you can click on create. So once you do that, you will have the access key, and then you have the secret access key. Okay, so these are basically the two keys that you need to configure your AWS CLI. You can download that because once you click on done, you can't access these keys anymore from this page. So you need to create a new one if you need to generate a new key for this particular user. So once you have this, your access key and your secret key, back to your AWS, back to your terminal where you have already installed your CLI, you can just go ahead and type in AWS configure. So I already have this already set up, but when you click on this, it will ask you to enter the default region. Then it will ask you to the default region. You can just type in US East 1, just like this. So it will ask you to enter the US region. So you can type in US East 1. Sorry, that should be a hyphen here. So this should be the correct sentence. So US East 1 for the region. That's basically where you have most of the resources available. And then it will ask you, let's see. So I already have an access key, so I don't want to put in the new one, but basically to ask you to enter the access key. So you just copy the access key, click on the paste and paste it right here. It will ask you to enter the secret key. So the same thing, just copy and paste the secret key. It will ask you for the default region. US East 1, basically where you have most of the resources. But if you prefer other regions, you can just specify the regions. And then finally, to ask you the default output format that you want. So JSON always more readable than, I think it has XML as the other option. But yeah, so you can just stick to JSON format. It's more readable and user friendly. So once you already have this, so basically if I'm trying to update it, I can just re-enter those details once the prompt comes up, but I don't want to. Okay, so once you have that done, you should be good to go. So this user or this IAM user has been configured on your terminal. So basically you can communicate with your AWS resources programmatically from the CLI and using the credentials. But then when you try to access resources that you have not specifically given access to, it will not allow you. So if, for example, as you continue to build your applications and you wanted to, interact with other resources, let's say AWS Bedrock, or let's say S3 Bucket, you still need to go back to the IAM user, and you still need to go back to the IAM user and attach those policies. So you should be able to see it under permissions. You can see add permissions. So you can always add new permissions, right? So you can always add new permission. But then if you are, so this is your account, you can just give full administrative access, right? Let me see. So this should give you access to all AWS resources, administrator access. Yes. So if you give yourself this specific policy, that should allow you to communicate with all the whole resources in the AWS console. So you don't need to like specifically say I want to communicate with this one, the one, other one. So if more like this is a root user and you want them to have the admin privilege to communicate with all the resources, so you can just specify that right here. Okay. So once we have that, I think we are good to go. We have our AWS configured and we have it programmatically ready to communicate with the resources from our code. So next thing, just cancel this. I'm just going to show us the code. But before then, let's see how we can actually play with comprehend on the console. Give me 1 second. Uh, so if you go to the console and you search for comprehend, so this will open the AWS comprehend console, and you can just jump in and try the AWS comprehend from here. I mean, it just have some use cases with like building cases, but you can customize what you want. You can just specify the text. You can just play with it to see basically how it works. So basically, what it does is it analyzes text in real time by using custom models. So you can specify the entities and just this is an example, right? So let me see what they did here. This is basically an inbuilt real-time. If we're trying to use a custom one, we need to specify the model called custom model classification. Let me see. Then we can specify tests, just put in a text and just analyze the text that we have given it. So basically what it does, it goes through the test and it just brings out those key entities or key phrases from those texts. You know, just the key phrases and it categorizes it. So example, it sees the name and it knows it's a person, this is a name, is a person, organization, is a quantity, currency, or whatever. So you can just play with it from the console. And you can also look at the custom models. I don't know, you can create new ones and just play with it. But our focus for this stream is how we can actually play with it programmatically. So I'm going to bring our code right here. And we can see that now shown. So if you're ready, I shared the GitHub repository before now, but I made sure the code is very straightforward and very easy. So first of all, we have our HTML, which is powering the UI that we saw earlier. The key thing here is just the speech API that recognizes that we're trying to use they're trying to giving data using the mic. That's basically the key speech, the key whatever here, the key function here. So other things is just normal inputs. So this is basically the only little bit complex thing here. It's just not really complex, but this is basically the WebKit speech API. We're just making sure that we can take in input from the browser, right? So other things are just basic UIs and just passing that data from the HTML files to the backend. So for our backend, let's just look at the package we're using. So the main package here is the AWS SDK. This is basically the version 2, but the version 3 is actually recommended, but version 2 still works fine. So the main SDK or the main dependency we are using here is the AWS SDK, which allows you to programmatically communicate with all the whole resources that you already have on your console. So we installed this, and of course I'm just using Express for the rest of the endpoint. And then we have our backend, which is here. Give me 1 second. So the main two things here, I'm just going to keep this very simple, is the entities and the statements, right? So this is communicating, this is basically calling the comprehend API. And just these two variables or functions is basically what is doing the heavy work that we saw on the browser, right? So this basically extracts the information that we're giving it. And we passing some categories it should look for. So for example, we want to make sure that, hey, figure out figure out the amount from the text that has been that is coming in. Just focus on getting amount and currency, just like what I told you. So when you pass in other data, that's basically what we're doing here. So when we pass in other data, it doesn't focus on that because we programmatically ask it to focus on just two things, which is one, the amount, and then the currency. So it has to be an amount. It has to be a currency. So when you just say 50 plus 50, it's not recognizing it because it's looking for currency. It's actually expecting you to give it a currency, right? So you need to mention the currency. So you need to mention, okay, $50, or you need to mention like maybe 50 naira. So it recognizes that, okay, this is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for these entities and patterns. I'm looking for a test that have to be an amount, and then it have to be a currency. So you specifically have to give it the pattern it should be based on. I think that's where we have the AI responsibilities, how we basically use AI comes in. So when you build, you want to make sure that the AI is not doing more than what it has been programmed to do, right? So comprehend also gives you that power to focus on specifically what you want to do. So there's the entity detection. It finds if you're specifically looking for people, just like we saw on the console. If you're looking to extract people, places, things, you specify what you're trying to build, what you're trying to determine. And then finally, we are focusing on the sentiment analysis. I'm just gonna copy this. So basically, what this will return when it takes the data, the amount, and what you mentioned, it's focused on passing that back to the AWS console and returning the settlement. So the settlement determines if, basically, if you're using plain text, more like if you are happy or you're sad. So when you give it a test, it determines, or it tries to see or hear from the tune if you are happy or if you're like sounding sad. So that's basically what the sentiment here is for. But then, not really sure we're utilizing it very well for our use case. Yeah. So basically, it's focusing mainly on the amounts and the currency for our use case, just the amount and the currency. For the settlements, it's just neutral, but then we're not really focusing on the settlement because our goal here is just to get key phrases, which is money and the category where the money was spent. So that's basically the function, the extract expense with AI is basically the function doing the heavy work. So most of the other functions here, I'm using normal regress expression to extract naira and dollar to make sure that it gets that very well. And yeah, the extract category, we passed in the text and entities, making sure that we are actually focusing on commercial items. So we are looking for, again, we're just focusing on money. So it has to be money and what the money was spent on, right? This is not necessary, but then I just put in a fallback just in case the AI network was not good and it did not work as expected. We can just, still keep our app lovely. It's just a dummy fallback. Yeah. So all these other codes are just dummy fallback just in case the network was bad and the endpoint could not communicate with the comprehend API. So that's basically what we have. So the other ones, normal JavaScript, giving us a good UI in like just totaling the amount that I have already returned and just presenting it in a beautiful way and the times and stuff. But yeah, the main heavy work is just that function, this specific function here, the function that extracts the expense with AI. We're just passing the text that we've spoken, give it to comprehend, look for the entities that we have specified using these patterns here, and then return if there's any settlements, back to us. So that's basically the function here. So very easy, very, very small piece of code doing the heavy lifting. Because here we are not training, we are not trying to build, a heavy model. This is already built. It's already built in AWS. So basically what we're just trying to do is give it the data and just tell it to do this for us. So we just have to learn how to use it, how to pass in what we want to specifically say, this is what we are looking for. This is what we want to build. This is what we wanted to focus on, So which is basically what we did here under the extract category. So we specifically passing the relative entities we wanted to filter, right? Which is like commercial items, organizations. Basically, the main stuff here is a commercial item, right? So we wanted to focus on looking for that amount we have specified and where it was spent, and categorize it amounts, and the category should be okay. I spent this on this. So at the end of the day, let me run this code again. So at the end of the day, when you give it a data, it focuses on filtering what it's looking for or what it has programmed to do, which is it's looking for amounts, and then it's looking for a category where the money was spent, right? So it's may not really be so perfect, right? But it's basically doing its job. So let's see again. $50 in transportation. It's basically got that. It did not. Okay, let's try again. Could not extract expense details. Let's see. $50 in transport. Okay, still not getting it because we are not probably saying what we did. We're just saying $50 in transport. So it's looking for, I spent $50 in food. I spent $50 in transportation. I spent a amount of money doing specific things. So it's looking for the amount and then where it spend it on. Okay, not really smart, but it's looking for a specific pattern. Let's see. I spent $50 on transport today. Okay, now it dictates that I actually spent $50 in transportation today. So it logs that in, right? But when I just said it should still be able to capture that, I don't really know why it's not. But let's try that again. $100 on data. It actually got that one. $10 in shopping. No, it didn't get that. So it's looking for a specific thing you spend the money on, right? Basically, you say you spend it on a specific thing. I spent $30 buying a book today. Okay, still not really smart. I spent $30 on clothing. Yeah, it captured that. Okay, not really that smart to actually, capture when we don't specifically speak in a specific pattern. But then we can get the idea of how comprehend works So it's we specifically asking it to do a specific thing. So that's basically what we have. That's basically what we have built. How we can actually use comprehend to actually, give it data and tell it to do a specific thing. So for now, this is working locally. I mean, you can see we're testing it and it's working. Uh, the next thing I want us to look at is how we can actually deploy what we have built to the cloud. Also, we can just deploy it to AWS using Amplify or any other service, maybe Lights now. But I want us to focus on Amplify because it's more easy, like very easy to deploy if you are using Amplify. But then we'll look at how we can also do that using Lightsnail. So I'm going to show you guys two ways we can actually deploy using Amplify and then using Lightsnail. The difference between both of them is this. So for Amplify, it's like uh, it's like your go-to when you just want a very smooth deployment. You don't have much time to worry about the infrastructure and every stuff behind the scene, right? So you can just stick to Amplify. But then if you want to have access to the easy tools behind the scene, you want to be able to log into the machine, the virtual machine itself. You want to have more access to it, so you can go for like Lifesnare. So both gives you controls, what you can control and what you can control. So you just have to determine what you want to use. So for Amplify, I created an Amplify YAML configuration code here. So it's basically telling it what to do. I just version the backend phases, the build, more like the CI/CD pipeline here. So I wanted to recognize that, hey, this is an npm, so it's Node.js, so it's not going to dictate that it's a Node.js application. And it's just going to run the commands needed to deploy the applications behind the scenes. So I don't need to worry anything about it, which is basically what we can do. Before I did that, I wanted to make sure I'm just deploying from GitHub to Amplify so that if I make changes to my code, automatically I can just set up automatic redeploy, or I can manually deploy. So there are basically two ways you can do this. You can use the amplify. You can use amplify CLI. You can use amplify CLI, or you can use the amplify console. For the amplify CLI, you need to install the amplify CLI also, just the same way you install the AWS CLI. But you can usually use npm if you're working with Node.js for that. Let's see. So you can usually use the what's it called, the npm install. You can just install it globally, and once you have that, just type in amplify configure. It will give you options. Let me show you basically what it looks like. It will give you options. It will basically take you to the console to create an IAM user. And then once you have that IAM user created, you can just enter the credentials. But you don't necessarily need to follow the instructions. Like if you already have, so it will take you to the console, and you just want to make sure that you already sign in. Basically, that's why it opened the console. But if you click continue, it asks you to specify your region. You specify your region. It will ask you, it will open another console to configure just give you the amplify documentation to follow. So you can basically just follow the instructions here. It's the next instruction is basically if I click enter, it's just going to ask me for the IAM user I've created. So basically to just take me to the IAM user. That's the same way we created an IAM user before now. So you just want to make sure that you're creating an IAM user and you're giving it Amplify policy access so it can communicate with Amplify to deploy your applications. And so if I click enter, it's going to ask me for the access key ID. It's going to ask me for secret access key, basically. So basically, when I'm done with the configuration, I'll just cancel this for now. When I'm done with the configuration, I can run amplify init. I think the other instructions are all here, like basically step by step. So just the same way what we did when we create an IAM user, you can just do all that from those instructions. So basically, once you have all that set up, all you have to do is just run amplify init inside the directory you want to deploy the application to. So it will ask you a few configuration questions, and you can just uh, answer those questions, and it will deploy your app automatically. Just create deploy, and you will see the URI. So the URL also on the console, and you can access your application. So that's one way of doing that, which is very fast. Like you don't actually need to go to the console every time you want to deploy or redeploy, right? But then you can just set it up automatically once and for all for the first time, so that you just need to deploy to GitHub and or any other buckets version bucket, yeah. And then you can whenever you make changes, deploy from here to GitHub automatically. It deploys to Amplify. So let's look at how we can do that from the console as well. So from the console, I can just search for Amplify. Okay, so I think I already have this deployed, but I'm just going to delete that. I should be able to do that from here. Let's see. Okay, so from the Amplify console, just click on deploy an app. So you already have your app. So you have other repositories here like Bitbucket or Code Commit or GitLab. So our code is on GitHub, so I will go to use GitHub. If you also want to deploy manually, maybe you have the code base on Amazon S3 or Zip, like you already zipped it in your local machine, you can just also do that from there. So whichever method you want to use. Then you can also make use of the starter template. So if your application is like a Vue, Angular, or Next.js, you can just select a template to create a repository, and then you can now use that repository to upload your code so that you already have the template set up. But I've already done that, so I already have the Amplify deployment. Sorry, the IAM2 already here. So I'm telling it just to run the basic npm CI integration. So it's just going to look at the packages in and just run the command that you need to run, which is basically npm install and npm start. So you already have that in place. So we just focus on configuring our code from here to GitHub. It will ask you to authenticate to your GitHub if you are logging in for the first time. Okay. So once that happens, you should be able to see your Git repositories right here. So I have the voice expense tracker. So I'm just going to select that and select the branch. I just have one branch, which is the main branch. So I can just go ahead. So just straightforward. You don't need to do any configuration. Just straight, and save and deploy. So our application does not need any environment variables, but if it does, if basically you are So because we're using the CLI and we're already in AWS console, so automatically, hmm, okay, give me 1 second. I think it's not going to work because we actually need to specify the environment variables. But give me 1 second. Let's see if it's going to work or not. So I'll just deploy. So I'll deploy and I'll wait for a few minutes for deployment to be completed. But I'm pretty sure our app is not going to work as expected. And the reason is we need to set up an environment variable to communicate with the AWS resources. Let me see. So it's still deploying, just a few seconds. Yeah, just give it few seconds. Okay, so I think we have deployed this. I'm just gonna open this in a new tab. Let's see what we have. So I don't know why it's looking funny. So most of our, so I'm not really sure why it's looking funny. Let me translate to English and say, I mean, our app was already built in English. So I'm not really sure why most of the text are not coming out as expected. Yeah, but that's something we can fix later on. But let's see if it works. So allow microphone. I spent $50 on transportation. So fair to process expenses. Okay. So I think let's see what the issue could be. I mean, basically, we know the issue is we don't have. So we don't have environment variables that we are asking to communicate to. I'm trying to see if it logs the error message for us. Okay, it's not really giving us the logs that I need. So basically what we need to do is add the environment variables here. So the access key and the secret key, we just need to pass it out here. So example, we just need to come here under the hosting environment variables and create new. So this should be access key ID. Just specify that here. The value of the ID that you're making use of, and then just the same way. So you do that for this. They specify the value. You specify. Let's actually try that. I'm going to create a new IAM policy. I'm just going to generate a new IAM policy access key. Sorry, for the previous user we created because I didn't save that. So I have 3 users here. I'm just going to do that from my console, but I'm going to remove that from the screen and I will look for my credentials. Okay, I think I have it. So I'm going to specify my keys here. Okay, so for some reasons, I'm just going to take this off the screen, right? Because these are like my root keys. I don't want to start creating a new one. So I'll just take this off the screen, add them, but just the same way, just add the keys, then add the access secret key also. Okay, you also specify the region. So you can just type in AWS default region. 1 second, so I'll bring my screen soon. Okay, I think I'm almost done here. Okay, so I was mistaking the secret key for the environment variables. So instead of adding the environment variable is basically if it's something that your app required, but this basically we need to store this in the secret instead of the environment variable. So go back to the secret on the secret under hosting. You should be able to add the access key, the default region, and the AWS security key. So just add all that here and save. Let's see. That should actually get our application working as expected. Okay. I'm going to try this again and see. $5 for coffee. Fair to process. Let me see what's on the back console. Oh, I spent $5 on coffee. Okay, I want to see what went wrong here. Not found. So not totally sure why it's not working right now. Well, let me see. $5 for coffee. Okay. I'm trying to debug what's going on, but still not still not quite sure why it's not working as expected. Let me see if the logs can give us reasons. Yeah, it's not really giving me a log to look at. Let's see, matrix, alarms. No, it should really be on the access log. Mm-mm. Okay, I don't have enough info to actually see exactly what's going on. I I think it has something to do with our environment variables, but then I have specifically added the secrets and still not working as expected. Yeah, so we don't need environment variables basically. The secret should actually do the job, but it's not working. Let me look at this IM row and see if that could solve the problem. So these have transcript access. Okay, okay. I'm going to add some policies here. Let me see if that will solve the problem. I'll give it full administrative access and comprehend and comprehend full access. Okay, let's see if that will solve the problem. I spent $5 on coffee. Still not working. Still not working. So I just have to take my time to figure out why this is not working after this stream. But then, yeah, let's see how we can use Lightsnare also, and deploy our application. So from the console, just search for Lightsnare. like cell, yeah. So the difference is like said basically gives you more access, like control to your application, right? It gives you more control to uh, have access to the console. So basically, you can actually it's just like a virtual machine that you can just control what is happening behind the scene, just like the way you're working on your terminal. So this should give us more access to what we can control and what we can control. So when you click on the lights there, select a region closest to you, where you basically want to deploy your application. Then you can select your application blueprint. So for this demo, for this stream, that's Node.js. So once you have that, you can leave every other thing as default. So want to SSH key, yeah, so you can actually log in. So the only thing is I think Life Cell does not have like a free trial like you can start with. So it does. So basically, when you select five for the $5 for the 512 MB two visual CPUs and 20 gigabyte storage, it gives you 90. That's more like 3 months free. After the 3 months, it starts deducting your money, right? But I think it requires you to enter a credit card if you don't have a credit card on your AWS already. So you must add a credit card before you can actually use this. So you can just stick with the $5 on, and then yeah, you can just create. So this is more like when you create an instance, when you create a EC2 instance, a virtual machine, and you just deploy your code into the virtual machine. So it gives you more access to like the console. You can log into the console, see what's going on behind the scene, and so forth. So a little bit more of technical needed, to deploy application to it because you need to bring in the code manually, just do the whole configuration from your end. But let's see. So that's basically it. So it gives you access to the console, like here. You can connect, set up the protocols, like set up, bring in, deploy your application, download it from GitHub. Just set up everything manually. More like it just gives you access to do the normal stuff you can do from your machine, just the same way we are running the code from the local machine, but then you can just do it from here, and you can set up the ports that you want it to listen to. So, but this gives you more control than Amplify, but Amplify makes the work more easy for you, right? But then I don't know why we're having the error message, but it's something I basically we have to fix some other time because of time. Anyways, I'm actually here if you have any questions you want to ask. So someone asked, okay, so I'll take the questions one after the other.
I can highlight them on the screen if that's easier for you. Just like starting from the earlier questions that we got. I think the first one we got was this one from Pizza Freud, the one that's highlighted.
So which AWS region is the most cost efficient? So when it comes to AWS regions, basically most so AWS have regions where they have specific resources available, right? So for the region, so from region, you're looking at the perspective of deploying your application, or you're looking at the perspective of where your customers are. So for example, if you're building an application, you can specify the region you want, not where you're deploying your application now, but the region that you want your application to live on, like the resources to access, right? So when choosing a region, you just choose the region where you have the resources you need. So, example, US East One mostly have all the resources you need in AWS console, right? But then, even if you choose that resources, if so, even if you choose those region, let's say US East One, but your customers are maybe somewhere in, uh, you know, Europe, you can still choose, you can still, deploy your application and configure what we call a CDN, a content delivery, network, so that your application is still very accessible, in other regions. So, but when it comes to cost efficient, you're looking at the region that have the resources you need and the region that is always stable. Some other times we hear that some regions are done while some are not. It happens, like some people in Europe can access a specific website, and maybe people in America cannot, vice versa. So this happens. Maybe the data center in Europe is having issues, but then I think that's where uh, CDN comes in, where you probably do basically put a cloud front in front of your application so that it's accessible in other regions. Yeah, but for the choosing the most cost efficient, not really looking at it from cost efficient, but basically looking at it from where your customers are mainly, and then if that region have the resources you need. Yeah, so that determines basically the region you want to choose. Do I have the resources I need for my application in this region? And then do I have most of my customers in this region? Okay, so it's talking to my data. How can I configure it or integrate the platform? So basically, what we did was, if you look at the GitHub repository I shared, so what we do was programmatically talking to comprehend. But from the console, I'll just share my screen back. Okay, I think I'm sharing my screen already. From the console, you can actually play with the AWS comprehend just to understand how it works. And then you can programmatically specify what you want to do, just like what I showed during the code review. So you can specifically tell it what to do. So we'll focus on comprehend, which is more of, let me just open that again, which is more of analyzing data. So it's basically what this particular AI does is it analyzes data and segments out of data he has given it. So what we did was we we spoke, right, using normal mic, and we use transcribe to transcribe the data from what we have spoken to give to comprehend. Then comprehend basically looks for two things. Uh, it analyzes the data and it brings out, it filters it based on what we have asked it to do. So which is basically what our line of code here does. I'll just bring that up one more time. So we are programmatically doing that here. We are programmatically telling it what to filter, right? So entities does filters. We're just looking for commercial item organizations. Uh, if you look at from the console, the examples they gave here, if you look at the key phases, it was filtering. It's filtering the entities and it's categorizing it like the type, if it's a person, if it's a number. So this basically what this specific uh, product does. AWS Amazon Comprehend. What it does, it filters data, it categorizes data. So you give it data and you're looking for a specific keywords. Find if money was mentioned here, bring it out, categorize it as money. So when I mentioned I bought coffee $50, it categorizes it as food because it's a food. Or if you spend money on transportation, it can categorize it as transportation and the amount. So it's just used to filter data. So you can actually play with it like from the console to understand how it works. You can put in your data and specify custom classifications, how you want to build it. or you can programmatically do that. So you can check out the comprehend comprehend documentation on how you can actually use that, programmatically, which is basically what we did on the stream. So we just programmatically gave it what to look for, which is from the test, we're just looking for amount and currency, and then we just passing that specific data. So we're telling it exactly what to do. Okay, so I hope that answered the question. So when we create the access key, do we choose the CLI option? Yes. So the CLI option, that's the option you should choose. So that allows you to communicate programmatically from your program. Like programmatically, you can actually use that on your program, like on your code. I can also use that on your CLI. So it's the same thing. So it can work if you're configuring it on your terminal. It can also work if you're using it directly on your code, maybe in the environment variable. You can pass it also. So that will also work. Can access be given to both AWS and Android users? So I'm not quite sure I got the question. Uh, so I'm not quite sure I got the question when you say, can access be given to both AWS and Android users? I don't know. If you can re-ask the question, like rephrase it, that would be better. Okay, so wondering how many platforms one can deploy code simultaneously. I mean, the code I deployed on Amplify, you can access it anywhere. You can access it from your phone, from your PC, from your Mac. So you can deploy and it's accessible from any device. So it's not device specific. So it's a web app, so you can access it from any browser. If that's basically what you're asking, Chuku. Okay, so someone asks, what is AWS best used for? So AWS initially is a hosting platform, right? It allows you to host your applications on the cloud. But now it's more than just hosting your applications. AWS has a lot of services, a whole lot of services that I don't think one person actually have the list of AWS services off head. So AWS have a whole lot of services that you can actually use as a cloud developer. As a developer, you can host your applications. You can do a lot of things. They have AI services. They have machine learning services like Bedrock. They have a lot of services, virtual machines. So a whole lot of services. They can basically be used for anything you can think of that you want to build. So I think AWS have it. So when you talk about anything on the cloud, platform as a service, software as a service, they have it all. So best use for security, making sure your applications are secured on the cloud, and yeah, whichever use case you can think of, you can basically use AWS services for that. AI models and the rest of them.
Okay, it looks like that was our last question. So, everyone that's still watching, please give a big thanks and a big shout out to Vincent for running this super long stream for us, 1 hour and 30 minutes. Vincent powered through it like a champion. So say thanks. Thank you, Vincent, for streaming with us. It was a really cool app. A really cool stream on building that app. That app was super duper cool. You're getting some shout outs here. Someone said it was fire. Donut Guitar says thank you. And on that topic, while we are talking about feedback, perfect
Yep.
segue there, make sure that y'all fill out this feedback form. It's super important to help us make our streams a little bit better for y'all and for to give some feedback to Vincent too. If you really liked his stream, make sure you put it in there there. So highlighted there in the chat, but you've got some more thank yous coming in from Anum. Vincent and I are going to log off in just a little bit. If y'all have any questions, make sure you send them right now. I made sure that we went through all the questions. So if you had any questions come up during the stream, we just went through all of them. If you didn't hear your like name being called or see your comment being pinned, just like scroll back in the video and you'll see it. But if nobody else has any questions, both of us are going to log off now. Thank you so much, Vincent, for helping us stream. I think you have one question coming in. Could you share the solution where Vincent saw the AWS bug?
Yes, I will do that. I will record a demo once I have that solved, and I will explain what went wrong and how we solved that, and I will post that in the community.
Thank you. Yeah, so Vince is going to follow up in a little bit. You'll take some time and figure out what was going wrong there. But really great stream. Thank you so much for joining us. And
Yeah,
we're both
thank you
going
guys.
to log off now. So, oh, sorry. Nope. Looks like you got one more question. When I deploy the app through Amplify, what settings do I use?
Uh, what settings do you use? So just use the default settings. But then, when I try to fix the issue with, the deployments, I will walk through the amplify again. So that should actually clarify more. But use the default settings. So if you look at the GitHub repository, I already have the amplify configuration in it. So that will basically know that you are deploying a Node.js application. So it will run the basic Node.js npm install and configurations. Yeah, but then I will when I walk through the issue again, like the bug we had that did not make our app to work online, and also the funny test that we had, I will fix that on a follow-up demo. Yeah, I think someone else. Did I have another question?
Yeah, you
No.
had a follow-up question. Mandy was asking, like, what about the service role in relation to that previous question?
Yeah. So what about the service role? Yeah, I think it's still part of the bug we're having. So I just have to figure out, what's wrong, and the follow-up video should answer that question.
Okay, that looks like it's it for all the questions. If y'all have any other questions, post them in the Beginners Week channel and we will make sure to get to those. So thank you so much, Vincent, for streaming with us. Have a good day, everybody. Bye.
Bye, guys.